Are you ready? Hey, everybody.
Hey, Pop.
Hello, everybody.
People in the back.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome to the Inner Loop.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome to the Inner Loop.
Without further ado.
Okay, so without further ado, we're going to get started.
We should get started. We're
Yeah.
rambling. I'm rambling.
We're going to get started. Welcome to the Inner Loop Radio. I'm Rachel Coons.
And I'm Courtney Sexton.
Thank you for joining us.
If you haven't already, remember to subscribe to our podcast, leave us a review, and check out our website at theinnerlooplit.org.
For any new listeners out there, here on the Inner Loop Radio, we delve into all things creative writing, whether that be inspiration or craft, publishing or editing, how to make a living, or just how we all sit down each day in front of an empty page.
Sad. But to make us sad, we invite friends and local writers onto the show to talk about their writing journey, what inspires them, or to delve deeper into craft.
On today's show, we want to talk about crossing genres, the funnest topic of all. And I feel like this is very apropos for my current state because since I finished my book, I haven't wanted to go back to it. So instead, I've just been like writing a bunch of different genres, playing around, throwing spaghetti at the wall, seeing what sticks.
Yeah, didn't you tell me you took a poetry workshop recently?
Yes, I took a poetry workshop and another workshop, and I'm going through a poetry book, and I'm taking the Aaron Sorkin screenwriting class.
All of this poetry? Rachel, I'm impressed.
I'm trying to be more like you, Courtney.
Oh, just, fluid and flexible and cross genre all the time.
But aren't you like a poet in your heart?
I am,
Secret
yeah.
poet?
Yeah, no, fiction is definitely the thing that is hardest for me. Like, I've never really tried to do anything like straight fictional. Like, I'm writing a novel, Father John Misty style. I would love to.
Totally. Every time I try to write fiction, it just comes out as nonfiction. I'm
Yes.
like, I can't stop writing about myself.
I've had like a couple of little spurts where like a scene will come to me and I'm like,
Yeah.
who is this person that just showed up in my head?
Ooh.
Who is this
Oh,
character?
love
And like
it.
they've recurred there a few times, but I don't know what they're doing. So I
What are
haven't
they
done it.
doing?
What are they
I feel
doing?
like we should mind this.
So we're going back like years now, and there's this girl / young woman in her like, early 20s who's a hyper empath, and like she can like feel butterfly wings crunching, like to like that extent. Like it's a little bit like
that sounds
magical
nightmarish.
realism. Yeah. So it's like
Sounds
she's had to like come up with all of these defense mechanisms to just move through the world.
It's like Spider-Man. This is like Spider-Man.
Yeah, sure. But she encounters this one day a young boy who has autism, and they somehow like really connect because she can sense more like how he's actually feeling almost more than he can. And so I don't know, it hasn't gone anywhere from there, but the opening
That's
scene
good. I
where
like
they
that.
meet, I actually love. But anyway,
Courtney, we should do this. So,
okay.
like, speaking of this, let's talk about like why writers resist crossing genres. What do you think? Why
I
do we
think
resist it? We know it's good. We know it's good for us, like vitamins and
I
vegetables. We got to
know.
have a varied diet. So,
So
why do we
okay,
resist?
here's one theory I have.
What's your
Writing is
theory?
hard enough to begin with.
Mm,
So, or like, especially carving out space to write is hard enough to begin with. And I
yeah.
liken it to when I tried to snowboard after having been a skier since the age of 4.
This is a good metaphor.
And like, could I do it? Could I get down the hill? Sure. I was terrible. I spent most of the time on my ass. And at the end of the day, I was like, I'd rather just put the time into skiing because it's more enjoyable.
Because I've like already put all this work into learning it.
Yeah.
And if I do that, I'll get better and better and better. And then one
Right.
day, triple diamond black.
Yeah, exactly.
But if I switch to snowboarding, I'm back on the green. What the fuck?
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
love this metaphor. This is perfect. This is
There you
great.
go.
I do have to say though that crossing genres when you can get yourself to do it, I feel like it makes such a big difference in the quality of your writing, even when you do
Sure.
go back to your comfort genre, you know? Like you
Absolutely.
have so many more tools at your disposal.
Yeah. Yep.
You get out of your comfort zone and then you kind of bring those new experiences back to the familiar places and then it's like brand new.
Yeah.
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 So here's my question. Is can crossing genres be a gateway to crossing mediums like marijuana leads to cocaine and heroin?
I feel like those are different things. Maybe that's a little bit of a mixed metaphor there, Rach.
No, but like, if once I master poetry and screenwriting
Yeah.
and fiction and nonfiction and playwriting, can I then like start, painting and drawing
Oh,
and
okay.
sculpting?
I mean, maybe. So, I mean, you know me. I have always felt like one art influences another. And okay, I'm terrible at sculpting. I'm like very mediocre at painting, but doing those things does inspire my writing.
Yes,
Yeah.
totally. And it's weird. It's like an inexplicable like way like it's much more easy to articulate how crossing genres improves your writing. It's less
Yeah.
easy to articulate why drawing improves your writing, but it definitely does. Like you can feel the difference.
Sure. Sure.
Well, I think we should stop babbling and get more on this
Wait,
from
don't you want to hear
someone.
more about my non-existent novel?
No. We'll do like a special postscript where
Mhm.
people have to, subscribe to hear Courtney wax on about a
Yeah,
non-existent
and no one's
novel.
allowed to steal that idea also. I'm copywriting it here and now.
Stolen. Consider it already stolen.
Ugh.
Up next, we invite a playwright, a ghostwriter, and a poet to join us. We'll hear from Authors Corner September Spotlight, Alyson Gold Weinberg. Stay tuned.
Gather. Gather, please. If you can gather in.
Gather round for the second half, and we're gonna get started.
We're gonna get started.
We'll get started. We're officially getting started. Not teasing you this time. Welcome back to the Interloop Radio. We've been discussing crossing genres, and now we'd like to welcome poet, playwright, and ghostwriter Alyson Gold Weinberg, author of Bellow Hiss from Finishing Line Press, her debut poetry collection, and our September Authors Corner Spotlight. Welcome, Alyson.
Thank you. Hi, Rachel and Courtney.
Hello, we're thrilled to have you.
Thrilled to
Hello.
have you on the show.
Thrilled to
So
be on.
before we talk about anything else, I have to ask you, what is ghostwriting like?
What is ghostwriting like? Um, it's very intimate.
Mm.
Um, you kind of, I mean, in reality, you're a Cyrano de Bergerac. You engage with sort of the subject, and then you kind of melt into the speaker.
Mm.
So it is kind of it's almost like being an actor in which you have to embody sort of the thoughts and feelings of somebody else. And the
Wow.
question is, how do you do that? And for me, it would typically mean months of interviews, like these kinds of conversations that we're about to have, but with me asking kind of weird off the wall questions
Hmm.
that you might normally not ask in a professional interview to get at weird sort of essential pieces of the person.
Wow, so interesting. Like, what's an example of the weirdest question that you ask,
Okay, so
if I
this is
may?
maybe the weirdest, but it's probably the most effective. I usually ask, what song do you listen to when you're in the car by yourself when the windows roll down at maximum volume? And it is shocking what people say. Like, I've had politicians say really wild things. Like then someone you think's going to say something kind of wild is like
Oh,
very
it's
mellow.
Enya.
Yeah, it's like very mellow, but like someone will say Led Zeppelin, and I'm like, oh, really? Like I'm always just like, wow, okay. It's never not surprising. And it just gives you this insight to like who they are when they're sort of naked, when they're not putting on a mask.
Yeah.
And we need to get in under that so that I can write really from who they are.
Yeah.
Amazing. I'm so fascinated. So you ghostwrite, you write plays, you wrote a play, and now you have this book of poetry. So tell us, for you, how does crossing genres, writing in different genres, how do they inform each other?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you both have said. I'd say I've always been kind of genre fluid. Um,
I love this, by the way. I love
I'm pretty sure we've coined that as a term
Yeah.
today.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Um,
genre fluid.
but it is interesting. It's not relevant to the idea of binaries. Like I
Sure.
think sometimes we really do think I'm a poet, I'm not a fiction writer, or I'm a
Mhm.
nonfiction writer, I'm not a speechwriter. And like we
Mhm.
put ourselves into these false categories.
Yeah.
Um, and what I've learned, especially the last few years, was that the writing that I thought was like my personal creative writing was also my professional writing. And my professional writing, like speech writing and ghostwriting, was also personal, and that it's all of a piece.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's so funny that you used that language, because one of the questions I had written down for the first part of the show that I didn't get to was, will we ever live in a post-genre world?
Exactly. I feel like we have some really beautiful examples, and you know, it's fun. Like I feel like um I get so much energy from other artists,
Mhm.
especially ones working in either other genre or other mediums. Like, for example, the cover of my book, which won't we can't show, I don't think, because it's coming out at the end of the month, but it's very beautiful and it's a beautiful painting that a friend of mine did. And I saw it and I just knew that that was the cover of the book. And what was
Mm.
fun is I had sent her the manuscript and she had picked the same painting to be on the cover as I
Oh,
had.
wow.
Wow.
So we were like, like this is it.
It's meant
Um,
to be.
yeah, it's really fun. And then of course, as a playwright, I love working with actors. I feel like we
Mhm.
can only be improved by working with other people and
Yeah.
like creating together. I mean, so
I
many
agree, yeah.
times as writers, we're sitting in our own little room by
Mhm.
ourselves. So
Well, and that's the
Yeah, and I
same.
sorry.
Sorry, Rach. That's why we have to read others all the time, right? Like it's the same reason. It's like even if they're not with us in the flesh, like we're getting
Mhm.
those vibes, that energy, those craft things, like there are things that can be borrowed from all different genres and even medium.
I agree.
Yeah, I was just gonna echo that and say I think all writing is improved by adding like different
Mm.
elements of different genres. The more you sort of genre bend, the better the writing is.
It's true.
I'm
It's
just
true.
hitching my wagon to this metaphor
Yeah,
now.
I know.
Yeah.
Going
Ride it
on.
into the night. I do feel that it's apt, and like I feel like the most exciting work to me is up against those boundaries,
Mm,
whether it is poem with a surrealist bent or play with poetry in it, or it's exciting. It's exciting. It feels almost like collage to me to layer these different
Yeah.
on top of each other.
I love that you said that. I literally used to, when we used printers more, when I was editing or doing a revision or a second draft, would cut apart
Mhm.
what I was working on and kind of move it around and play with it. And that, yeah, brings, yes,
I love
collage.
that. Yeah, I love that. I think sometimes all of my senses want to be involved, and so I'll hear music that goes with the poem, and I'll think of images that goes with the poem or play,
Mhm.
whatever I'm writing. And then I'm like, well, I get really greedy. I want them all in it somehow.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah.
I go to residencies and meet all these like artists who work with all the different mediums, and I'm so envious. I'm like, why do I not allow myself, like somebody asked them in a Q&A, how did you decide to bring in, like, acting in with your writing or like a performative aspect or music? And how did you get into this multimedia art? And they were like, I just gave myself permission. I just
Exactly.
I just did it.
I just
It's
said
so
I'm
true.
allowed.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
And
it's
I was
about
like,
permission.
wow.
It's permission, right? Like, because let's say you're a poetry major, which I was. I majored in creative writing with a concentration in poetry, but I also wrote fiction and I also wrote, nonfiction and plays. But it's like at some point I just had to define myself. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes we get too stuck in that definition. Rachel, I do wonder how old those artists were.
They actually were my age. Well, maybe
Okay.
30s.
So that's so
I'm
younger
slow.
than me.
I'm peeking out of my 30s in a minute here.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I do think my children are both artists, and I do think I've learned that a little more freedom and playfulness from them. They're both kind of
Definitely.
all media, all genre, all the time. And so
Mhm.
they both act, they both sing, they both write, they both
Nice.
film, and it's so cool.
Yeah.
So let's all just give ourselves
I'll just
permission.
Let's all just be 20 again. No,
yeah.
God. No. No.
No thanks.
Yeah.
No, I'm good. Good.
Thank you. And also I don't think my kids would be like, "Oh, great, mom's doing performance art."
I would support that, Allison.
I
I
I
would
know.
support it. I
100%
support it.
support that.
I know. They would not want that. Yeah, so there's often nudity involved and
Yes. Again, I completely
I
support that.
support it too. Yeah. Let's all just act like we're living in New York City, okay? They
that's
give
Right.
right.
everybody permission to do anything. They're like, it's
Exactly.
all art. So, speaking of art, why don't you tell us about your latest poetry collection? I would love to hear about Bellow and Hiss and,
Absolutely.
how it started. How did you find the like inspiration to develop it into a full collection?
How it started, how it's going.
Yeah,
How it's
exactly.
how it started. Hmm, how it's going.
Exactly.
That's it. That's the whole answer. So it started actually, this is I think kind of unique, but I was a poet from, sort of teens on. And then, like many people who have a partner and children, I had to kind of put that as my focus aside to a little bit, maybe just focus on writing poetry when I was at a workshop or residency, like you talked about, and focus on the paying work. Um, but when they got a little older, I simultaneously started writing poetry again and going into psychoanalysis.
Mm,
And the book kind of, I know people say this and it sounds trite, but the book did kind of write itself, because I started writing these particular poems as a part of psychoanalysis by, there were things that I was getting in touch with from my childhood and my past that were too painful or too obscure to me and not available enough to me to write about in any other form than poetry.
mm,
And so I felt very blessed that, we talk about the toolkit. This is not something that could be written, for me at least, as nonfiction, like a memoir. It wasn't something I could write as fiction that felt still too close. But poetry just felt like, sort of the baby bear just right. um,
totally.
and so I actually, when something would come up in therapy, I would write a poem sort of as an answer or response to a moment within the therapy and bring it in. And then we discuss it because it was so painful to discuss with no context in the poem
Hmm.
provides sort of like the unconscious material behind whatever the memory or experience was. So that went on for a while, and then I realized that there was a trajectory to them. I started, sending them out, and I was 51 at the time. And even though I'd been a writer my whole life, I had never sent my work out. But I started to feel like, what do I have to lose? Um, and then I got acceptances and won a few
Amazing.
prizes and got
Wow.
got a lot of confidence. So yeah, and then eventually it felt like a book because it kind of moved across what I call the yearning curve. You could
I
see
love
growth.
that.
Thank you. You can see growth. You could also see, I mean, some of my poems are dark, and they can be darkly funny, but some of them are really dark. A lot of them are dark.
It's okay. We love dark.
They're a
We
bit
love dark.
dark, but they go from darkness to light. They move and
Mm,
progress. Um, and so yeah, so this was actually, it got published because I sent it in for a particular competition, New Women's Voices chapbook competition that Finishing Line Press holds each
Mhm.
year, and they picked it.
mm.
So
Wow.
almost here.
Amazing. Well, I would love to hear some poems
Yeah.
after that amazing
Okay.
description.
Okie doke. Well, so as I said, Bellow and Hiss is not a memoir, but you could call it a memoir in verse. Um, and this poem lives in that fraught kind of middle place of adolescence. It's called Cusp. 1. Crowned first into dirt, I mildly concussed. Not my sport, riding. I'm not a ponytail swinging girl who perfumes the path with green apple shampoo, who calls me out in the summer camp shower room. Hey, ice cream tone tits. 2. In the city to see Annie, Dad and I choke down chunks of meat and bun. I hold a cold Coke to my forehead. Does your face hurt? It's killing me. That's what he says, his favorite joke. It's my birthday, and my gift is Broadway, and Neil Simon is all that's left at TKTS, not some tap dancing 3 orphan. On stage and off, an awkward father and daughter pas de deux. I ought to be in pictures. Mom would have chosen better. But this is the summer of 1981, and she's tied up in Danbury Hosp getting brain zap ittle. She's tied up in Danbury getting tied up, brain zap. She's my mom sending smoke signals from the psych ward.
Mm. I love the green apple scent. It's so evocative of teenagehood in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. I also that closing image, the sending signals, it's like there's so many ways you see that, especially when thinking about electricity. Like it just, yeah. Can we have
Um,
another?
Some more,
yes,
please.
but I feel kind of bad because I'm realizing that these are all pretty dark. But it turns out okay, I guess. The next poem is a part of a series of how-to poems that I like to write. They allow me to create a kind of container for feelings that are difficult to contain. And this one is called How to Make a Poet. You can do this the old-fashioned way, your junk or some other guy's. Put it in a drawer, let it prove. Does it rise? Punch it down, prove it again. Send to study with dead men who worship hawks and alcoholics. Do not give your poet authentic praise. Try, you could be Miss America. Say, if I wasn't your father. Linger on its waist to hip ratio, tweak its nipples, be creepy about cheekbones. Act a bit incestuous. Absence is good, of the mother, better. Literal death or some other spirit or intellect. This also works for fairy tales. This also works for witches. Your poet needs words. It needs curses. It will take time, but it will find them. Do not help your poet in any way. Important. Walk it over broken glass. Let it hurt. Ignore it.
Wow. Very well done. I feel like so many people try the how to
Yeah.
format and it falls flat, but that was
Did not.
it was powerful.
Okay, the next one's a little funny. It's actually
Like
one
I
of
said, we like dark. Don't
It's
feel like you have
fine,
to go
yeah.
easy on
I
us.
don't know why I'm apologizing. It's like I'm a
No.
poet. Like, what do you want? I'm
Yeah.
not.
We want dark.
Paint it
Okay.
black.
Give it to us. Okay, so just after a lockdown, I think I mentioned in 2020, I wrote a magic realism play about psychoanalysis called Object Relations. So as I was writing the poems as Alyson, I was also writing a play about a poet named Sam who wrote poems in psychoanalysis. And the main character, Sam, wrote this poem sort of as a fuck you to the therapist, where she kind of takes on the therapist role and kind of skewers it. History. What is your middle name? When were you potty trained? Who was your first love? Why do you cry? Who am I? Doctor, it doesn't matter. Neither does nurture or nature. I just appear. I care. I promise. I swear I will be there. The seas and mhms spouting north to south, speeding down the DSM 5, riding shotgun with Oedipus, your mother, and the pothole in your heart. Have a cup of something hot. Do you like my throw pillows? That's my landscaper. Should I answer? Do you need an earthly body? Do you want to drown? Have a sip of water. We still have time.
Wow. Awesome. I feel so connected, Alison. I'm in psychoanalysis too. I
Yeah.
have been for 15
Yes!
years.
Rachel just sent me a list of people as well. I was like, I think this is where I need to like move. Yeah.
How many years, Rachel?
15.
Yes, queen. Yes. That's exactly where I am. I'm at 15.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So, you know what? I do firmly believe this wasn't planned, but like this is an advertisement for psychoanalysis. I do firmly believe it helps the craft. I really do.
yeah. I agree.
Because you can't write from the self if you don't know the self.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yep.
Oof.
Well,
Girl.
this has been one of the best discussions we've ever had on the Interloop
Yes.
Radio. You can find out more about Alyson, read more interviews and articles, and buy her book, Bellow Hiss, on our website, theinterlooplit.org/authors corner, available now for order. You can also catch Alyson at our next Interloop reading event on September 19th and at her book launch at the Writers Center on November 7th. But Alyson, before we let you go, will you play a little game with us?
Sure.
Rachel loves the games.
I love the
I
game.
feel like
So
one already.
I think this one's gonna be fun. Up next, we will find out what Leaves of Grass would have sounded like as a screenplay. Welcome back to the Interloop Radio.
We turn now to a little cross-genre writing game. I'm really, really excited about this game. It's going to be so good. Before the show, I gave each of us, myself, Courtney, and Alyson, a famous piece of writing, and we each had to turn it into a completely different genre. And I feel like this game is amazing. Why don't people play this game all the time? I
all the
had the best
time.
experience. What about you guys?
Yeah, it was really fun, actually.
It's a great tool, really. It's I loved it.
Yeah.
Nice. Awesome. So,
I
I
want
think
to try it with like something of my own next time because like often my like
Mm,
poetry will inform or like lay the groundwork for like longer essays of mine, but I would love to like take a finished piece and actually try to do it. Anyway.
totally. What a good
Yeah, I
idea.
will
Like,
say on that note, I did a workshop recently, and that was something we had to do, which was basically it was with Gabrielle Calvo Caresi. And what they did was say, take your poem, already written poem, and now translate your poem.
Mhm.
mm,
And that was just like kind of ineffable. I couldn't really even understand what that meant, but then you do it, and it came out really cool.
wow, I love that. I love all
Mhm.
these ideas. I'm gonna write them all down and try to do. Okay, so I thought maybe we would start with you, Courtney.
Okay.
For listeners, Courtney had my personal favorite prompt. She had to take the monologue, the always be closing monologue from Glengarry Glen Ross, um, which I don't know if you all know it, but everybody knows the always be closing. Basically, Alec Baldwin comes in and reams out all of these employees for being terrible salesmen, and he screams and curses at them, and it's hilarious and wonderful. It's a classic monologue. So Courtney had to take that and turn it into poetry.
So this is not actually funny.
Did
But
you go dark too?
that's
I'm
what
so
happened.
confused.
That's what happened. Okay. All right. It's called The Boys Club, which again, like not super original, but here we are. The Boys Club is where boys go to talk about money and cars, and to be afforded the luxury of talking about money and cars. Boys and the Boys Club sell souls, the things no one wants but everyone needs. The boys and the Boys Club go home to their wives when they're good and ready, or sometimes not at all, because they at least learned the alphabet and they always be closing. You like that?
I do
Yes,
like that.
love it.
That's where I am. Yep.
Love
Yep.
it.
Wow. Nice work, Courts.
Thanks. Thanks. That's what a little bit of effort gets me. What if I put a lot of effort into something? It would be amazing.
Totally. Hopefully that inspires you, just gets those wheels turning.
Always.
Okay,
I want to hear yours.
yeah, so mine, I was gonna do mine next. I took Alice in Wonderland and
Mhm.
turned it into a memoir.
Ooh.
All
Nice.
right, here's what we got. It all started with a flash of white, and then everything changed. If I had been a different person, perhaps I would have been satisfied sitting by the river, listening to the water gurgle, and watching my sister read line after line of little words marching dutifully along the pages, with no pictures to shake them up. But I wasn't that person. Back then, the ordinary world seemed to me not just boring, but torturous in its mundanity, an endless, agonizing stretch of nothing to do and nowhere to be, much like the stretch of words in my sister's book that had nowhere interesting to go. It made me wonder what was the point of all this time, if we're just going to simply sit through it. And therein lies the irony. Time seemed useless to me then, but now, after the flash of white that altered the course of my life forever, time seems as precious to me as it did to that rabbit with a waistcoat and pocket watch.
Cute. I like it.
Oh,
I was like, I could do this. I could get
Yeah,
that memoir tone.
it worked. It worked.
totally worked. I loved it.
Mhm.
All right, grand finale, everyone.
Allison, show us up.
Allison's time for Allison to shine.
Mhm.
I asked Allison to take I Sing the Body Electric from Leaves of Grass, Walt Whitman, and turn it into a piece of fiction. And she turned it into a play, which we will all read for you now.
Yes. Okay. Title of the play is Leaves of Grass, Speed Dating with Walt Whitman in the Multiverse.
Fucking love it.
Good evening, and welcome back to the smash hit surreality show, Leaves of Grass, Speed Dating with Walt Whitman in the Multiverse. I'm your host, Will and Grace's Sean Hayes.
Woo!
Yay! Each suitor will have 30 seconds to win Walt's heart. When the dinger dings, Walt, you must move to the next chair. Last week you lingered with Bob Dylan and it got so be more like a Rolling Stone this week. Today's suitors are Sylvia Plath. Girl, would it kill you to smile? Don't answer that. Lin-Manuel Miranda and David Bowie. Now let's flex that diction. Sylvia, you're first. Rise from those ashes with your red hair, honey. Ding! She sits opposite Walt. The love of the body of man or woman balks account. The body itself balks account.
And when you find someone to whom you feel you can pour out your soul, you stop in shock at the words you utter.
And if the body does not do fully as much as the soul, and if the body were not the soul, what is the soul?
Kiss me, and you will see how important I am.
Ding! That got a little dark. Next is Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Pardon me, are you?
Lock up your daughters and horses. Of course, it's hard to have intercourse over 4 sets of courses.
No more sex. Pour me another brew, son.
Let's raise a couple more to the revolution. Well, now I'm quoting Walt as Lynn. 2 apprentice boys, quite grown, lusty, good-natured, native-born, out on the vacant lot at sundown, coats and caps thrown down. Ding! Ooh, is it hot in here? Bowie sits down. The expression of a well-made man appears not only in his face, it is in the joints of his hips and wrists. The strong, sweet quality strikes through the cotton and broadcloth.
How many times does an angel fall?
The swimmer, naked in the swimming bath, seen as he swims through the transparent green shine, the bending forward and backward of rowers and rowboats, the horseman in his saddle.
Check ignition and may God's love be with you.
I think we have a winner. We'll see you next week on Leaves of Grass, Speed Dating with Walt Whitman in the Multiverse.
All right. So I'm not a singer, maybe.
I feel like you did pretty good. That was awesome.
Alyson, that was so cool.
Yes,
you guys are
and
great. I loved yours.
thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for being on the show, playing with us, and sharing your new work with us.
My great pleasure.
That's our show. We'll be back next Monday with our Just Checking In series, where we give our writer friends a call to hear how their writing lives are going.
And if you want to hear or learn more about The Inner Loop and all of our programming, visit us at theinnerlooplit.org, where you can also donate to support us and local literature. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The Inner Loop Lit.
Today's episode was produced by me, Rachel Kuntz. Our theme music is by Andrew Logan, and our technical advisor is James Skinner. Thanks again to Alyson Gold Weinberg for joining us on the show. And if you enjoyed today's episode, sing a song of yourself.
Or if you're like me and you're singingly challenged, better yet, you could leave us a review.
Such as, I sing the Inner Loop Electric. The armies of writers I love engirth me and I engirth them. They will not let me off till I subscribe to them, listen to them, and donate to them, and leave them a review with the charge of my soul.
And girth. Yes.
Girth.
And don't forget to subscribe.
Subscribe.
subscribe so you can get inspired, get focused, and get lit on the Interloop Radio.
Happy writing.
Right on.